Hello, everyone. Welcome to our final training in this series. We wanted to ensure that everyone that we contract and partner with um, knows how to complete an ORR 6 report, uh, or as we usually just call it, the 6-month report, because it's due every 6 months. There are 2 reporting periods, and we'll get into that in a second. So we've talked about employment, we've talked about refugee school impact, senior services, refugee health promotion, and the last one we're covering is youth mentorship. So we will jump into that here, and let me share my screen so you can see. All right, fantastic. Hope you all can see that. Okay, I will speed up my spiel and not hold you on too long because you've probably seen a couple of these now. Um, so again, there are multiple tabs below for the different services, but your contract coordinator will usually hide like employment if you don't have an employment contract, or at least it's not under that contract you're reporting on, or they'll hide school impact or senior services, etc. So we usually try to provide you a template that only has the services you need to report on to make it easy for you. So yeah, let's just jump over here real quick to the instructions tab. That will be left on regardless of what your template looks like. You will always have that instructions tab, or should. Let your coordinator know if you don't. So yes, there are 2 reporting periods. So ORR uses the federal fiscal year, and that's what they require our reporting to be on that same schedule, that same period. So the federal fiscal year goes from October 1st to September 30th, and it always crosses 2 calendar years. So as of this recording, it's September 2024. So the federal fiscal year that these reports are for federal fiscal year 24, because the federal fiscal year is always the year that the period ends on or ends in. So it's 2024 for this report example we're going through today. Let's talk about the 2 periods of time. So the first reporting period, it's for 6 months from October 1st through March 31st. And that 6 months collection and reporting of data is due April 15th, or the next business day if for some reason the 15th falls on a weekend or a holiday. So that is the first reporting period, and you're just covering what's happened in those 6 months. So that's the first period. Second period is due October 15th, but this time it is not 6 months, it's actually all 12 months. It's just the second period of data and reporting. So again, it's due October 15th, and it covers October 1st from the previous calendar year all the way through September 30th of the current calendar year, which again, this year, federal fiscal year 24. And it covers all 12 months of data. So your 6-month report back from April, it's not going to be erased. You're not starting fresh over. You're just building on it. And there's just going to be those new numbers added into this reporting period 2 report in October. So I hope that makes sense. There's a couple of kind of tips / acronyms, things to just help you know what programs are being talked about in the shorthand in your template. And now let's actually jump into it. Okay. Yeah, so youth mentoring. If you watch the refugee school impact training, it's very similar. We're going to call a lot of the same things, but still felt we should have a separate one here. Okay, so program name, again, that's you're calling out if there's a specific like population funding associated. So if this is an Afghan specific contract or a Ukrainian specific, you would probably put Ukraine or Afghan in that program name. You might list you actually would probably list your agency there, but it's not necessary. and then you would say what it is. So youth mentoring. So it might say something like Ukraine Catholic Charities Youth Mentoring, yeah, Youth Mentoring Program, and that'll cover it. Because we know most of these contracts, we have multiple services in it, so you don't have to name like what we know it as. I would just make sure it calls out the service, the population, if that applies in your organization. And reporting period. So again, reporting period 1 is that October through March. Reporting period 2 is the October through September of that new calendar year. Fiscal year, we've talked about that a lot. So don't worry about it. Just try to remember federal fiscal year is always the calendar year that the period ends in. So 2024 for this example. So pop that in there. If you forget or put a different format, it's okay. It's just a cosmetic thing. We'll fix it, and make sure you have a copy of that final report. State grantee. Okay, well, Oregon is the state, and then you are the grantee or the sub-grantee, so you put that in there. And then finally, date. It's the date that you submit the report. So that part is pretty straightforward. This is just a very general note about youth mentoring, is that youth mentoring is only supposed to be provided to children between the ages of 15 and 24 years old. So I know that has been a bit confusing at times, but 15 to 24 is the age range. And so if for some reason by accident you've provided services to someone outside of that range, and you've reported it to us, we understand and we thank you for providing them service, but you just would not want to report them on this, because this is asking how many eligible individuals were served under this contract area. So the top line is type of participant, section A. So eligible youth mentees, pretty simple. You just report how many youth were mentored between that 15 to 24 age range during that period. Now we are able to discuss parents receiving orientations, as you'll see down in section C, completion by type. But we're not required to, even though we can. And it's not something we've typically built in or necessarily expected our contractors to do. So unless you specifically know that you're serving parents directly with mentorship, and that they're really being included with their child or young adult receiving that service, then you would really just count the children or the youth there that have received orientation. So I am sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit, but it seemed relevant enough to cover, and we'll see it again in a second. Okay, so next section is section B, primary contracted service provider. So this is where, again, you're putting in data based on what type of agency you are, and the total is going to match section A's total. And again, for unduplicated. So if one is in more than, if someone is in more than one service within youth mentoring, you still only count them once, even if they receive 4 or 5 activities within that. So just keep that in mind. Like I said in the refugee school impact training, we're not currently contracting with schools to do this. We're contracting with resettlement agencies or community-based organizations. So your contract coordinator probably is going to hide this line here, school grade 9 through 12. So unless you're a school, you won't fill in anything here. So the majority of you are either going to be a resettlement agency, or in here, in the other local agency, you would type community-based organization, which is just another nonprofit, culturally specific, responded to, our request for proposal. You would put your information there and that total, and it would match the section A total as well. Completion by type. So again, we covered this already, but parent-student orientation, you're probably just putting in students that received orientations, unless you're like very consciously and specifically know that parents are being part of the orientation, and you're collecting their information in the monthly and annual report as well. But if you're not, just count the youth and children you've served. Grade promotion, it's the same as we talked about in the school impact program. This is just for children that have promoted from the grade they were in to the current grade. So they've progressed to the next grade in the sequence, essentially. So this is not about recording if anyone has skipped grades or somehow got advanced placement or something like that. You're simply letting ORR know, hey, this person, went to school. We helped them with these mentoring services, and they weren't held back. They didn't drop out, et cetera, et cetera. And they have progressed to the next grade and plan to enroll. That's what you're recording here. So yeah, that total you would enter in here. And then again, like we said in the school impact training, so other completion by type, there are other activities, of course, not related just to an orientation regarding youth mentoring or promoting grades. And so if you are doing other activities that are called out in your contract language, you would list that type here, and then the total unduplicated that participated in it. And if you provided more than one other type, you would list each one separately here. We don't want to see a long list with commas or plus signs here. We want it called out separately. Yes. And if you have provided more than 3 additional activities or service types within youth mentoring, just report the top 3, even if you've provided some others as well. That's what they're asking for. So just put that in here. You can always tell us somewhere else in narrative or a different report that you send to us. If you're doing other things, we can try to figure out how to communicate that to ORR so they know. Yeah. So this report is a bit more simple. It's a bit more straightforward, but we did call it a couple of unique things. The very last thing is trends. So for trends, again, this is not wanting a summary of the things that you've provided. This wants you to analyze and reflect. I'm reading it. Analyze and reflect on the data reported in sections A through C. And they want you to report overall observations in the trends of the data and explain any anomalies. And of course, this can include trends based on new program components or initiatives. So just to try to simplify that more, again, we don't want a summary here. Well, ORR doesn't want a summary here, specifically just listing all the activities and accomplishments or struggles generally. They really want you to analyze what you're seeing and help interpret that. So, for instance, if like what we've heard that a lot of youth they don't have a high interest for a lot of the components within youth mentoring, so they're not necessarily asking for help filling out a FAFSA application. They're not necessarily touring colleges and asking for help and mentoring around how to enroll in college. A lot of them are looking to jump right into a trade or into employment. They're trying to help their family out financially, or they're maybe just not pursuing secondary education at that time. And so there's a trend there, and the trend is that the most utilized or requested service within youth mentoring has to do with finding employment, employment related workshops, and just conferences and help finding work. That is a high trend right now. So this would be a great place where you would call that out. And other than that, anomalies is really, it's mostly going to be about discrepancies. So if for some reason you say that 20 youth were served here, but then you only report 19 down here. You know, I can't think of what a good scenario for that would be, but if for some reason you strongly feel that the numbers just are not going to line up between sections or total up to that same total at the top, you could do your best to clarify that here and explain why that's happening. So it just helps OR understand like that it's not just a math calculation issue, but that there's some intentional reason. There's something you're trying to communicate with that number difference. So those are really the biggest examples. And you can always reach out to your contract coordinator if you're just not sure need more help or clarification. But again, this is a short training that really covers it. So again, glad to be with you and to give some support and guidance. You can always reach out to us if these videos don't provide everything you need, and we are happy to help. All right, thanks so much. Take care. Bye.